Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome into another edition of Infection Podcast. My name is Nick Craig. You can follow me on X at Nicholas M. Craig, or of course, check out our website, infectionpodcast.com. Brian with an I, Aldridge. I was just thinking, Brian, I guess for our audio listeners, they probably haven't been able to download a podcast in the last 3 weeks, I guess, because archive.org has been down. So I guess we'll have to host the MP3 locally for this episode. Brian with an I, Aldridge, what's going on, buddy?
Well, hey, at least we have that flexibility with ours. We can change the source pretty easily. So, and we could always, I don't know, would we be able to use the backend? So is the public facing? Like, can you log in the backend and access your own files? Or there's
it's all gone.
Nothing right now.
Nothing.
Yeah, I've not really looked at it too much, but
it's a disaster. Like, there's a lot of
news titles saying like it's down, things are happening, but I haven't dug into it too much.
Oh, it's back up.
Yeah, I heard they were trying.
I was on it last night. I was listening to a podcast where they were talking about archive.org and it was down. Let's see.
Seems like they keep getting hacked or something.
So this is what it says. So I'm trying to log into our account, and it says, "We're sorry, logins are not allowed at this time." So I guess you just can't upload new content, but I guess new copies of I guess old copies of things are available. Yes, it's back 2 hours ago.
Read-only manner.
Read-only manner.
At least our old episodes, right?
That's great.
Still accessible.
The feed is back. That's great. Okay. Well, hi, Brian. Cold open.
Yeah, we can go ahead and just right on the beginning put this one on our own, and then when they fix it and let us upload again, we can
move it over.
All right. Well, if you want to find, is this where we're at? If you want to find me, you can find me.
Yeah, I mean, okay, it's all
at Brian Aldridge and Gab Getter, Truth Social, and all the other places. So
it's
right.
I want to, before we move on to our topic, it's crazy. So with archive.org, so what happened? Somebody breached them and I think held them for ransom. And it's been at least, well, we did our last show on the 7th. I think it was the Tuesday or Wednesday after that. So the 8th or 9th of October when they got breached. And as of 2 hours ago, the homepage was nothing more than just a message saying that they were down. And that there was the library opened up last week with the book library. But this homepage and the Wayback Machine and all of that stuff was down. Which is crazy because so much stuff is on archive.org.
They were breached twice. So the first time was the one on the 9th. Okay. They recovered from that. And then a couple days later, they got breached again.
Happens.
So, so whatever it is, like someone took advantage of, or they implanted something that they were able to, once they got back up online, they were able to get back in. Because I was seeing things like they still had access to the mailing backend service. So, I mean, I'm assuming they could reset passwords or reset passwords and do all kinds of things if that was happening. But it was 31 million Internet Archive users' information. So I'm assuming we'll get an email with a way to reset once they are confirmed and probably are comfortable that they're not in the back email system. They'll send us a thing to reset our email or our password, because right now they're assuming they have all our passwords. They have all the passwords, of course we generate them. So it's unique to this website.
Yes.
But still we need to, they don't want to just say, all right, log back into your old account, because that password is no longer secure.
It's been amazing as I've watched this. I've been seeing stuff on the internet and podcasts. I made the terrible decision to listen to Twit yesterday with all the liberals on there. It was on in the background, listening to a bunch of liberals bitching.
You gotta listen to the episode after the election and see how they're feeling.
Which is actually what I posted in the chat. I said I can't wait to listen to the episode on November 8th or 10th or whatever date that is. So they, of course, bitching and complaining about Elon Musk and how he's the devil.
He's ruining tech and ruining technology.
Yeah. The guy, they all drive Teslas, of course. Just a typical stuff that you would expect from brain dead idiot liberals. It's funny. The gaming industry and the tech industry, Brian, are essentially one and the same. I mean, they're at this point in time, there is no seemingly no divide between the groups. They both of those industries, except for like the and they're not really tech, but like the finance, I'll call like finance bros, which also
Yeah.
tend to kind of bleed into like programmer bros a little bit, like in the crypto
They like to go out and drink
fair.
and
Not even that, but like their mindset. Like
go hang
typically
out. I mean, there's just a different generation of people.
yeah, but also like the crypto bros tend to align more with like what would be described as right-wing ideology, because they're like, government, leave me alone, like FTC. Oh, by the way, the Twit episode I listened to, they were gushing over Lena Khan and the great work that she's done as the head of the Federal Trade Commission. Amazing.
So many things that have been accomplished.
Case after case after case. Screwed me in my non-compete. But yes, I'll take a Japanese bow to the great Lena Khan for the great phenomenal work that she's done as the chair of the FTC. All of that said, it's shocking to me that as I was listening to this show and a show a couple of weeks ago from the same network, like it's completely indistinguishable from anything in the video game industry. I mean, it's the same people essentially. It's really disappointing, because I just wanted to relax on a Sunday night. I was getting some show prep done. I was like, it'd be great. A show I haven't watched in 10 years, This Week in Tech. Let's see what's going on. And it was just a 3-hour complain and gripe fest about Trump and Elon Musk for 3 freaking hours. And I'm like, this is why all of these industries are seeing a mass exodus, I guess. I don't know.
Well, so
I just want a break. Brian, I just wanted a break. I just wanted a break. It's 2 weeks in front of the election. I'm losing my freaking mind with all the stuff that's going on. And I can't. I just wanted to listen. I just wanted to put some mindless content on in the background, and then I was arguing with people in the YouTube comments. It really ruined my Sunday evening. So there you go.
Well, what can you do?
Nothing.
Well, all right. So do you
I've derailed the show
enough? You want to jump into some news here? Is there anything that you off the top, because we got a lot of news spread out all over the place.
Yes.
Is there anything that you wanted to touch on first?
Yes, I'd like to talk about Winamp, because is this the full Winamp story? Did you dig into the details?
No, there's
on
more
this?
after. I've read.
Okay.
And I'll find the update, because this is a mess. All right, I'll get the updated one if you want to start introducing people to the.
Before you do that, I want to ask you a question as our expert old person on the program, Brian.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first experience with? You used an MP3 player. Winamp came out relatively late. It was like 96. So do you remember your first Winamp experience? You remember the first time you kicked the llama's butt?
Whipped it.
Yeah, whipped it. I'm sorry.
So I remember my first interaction with an MP3, which was, I was on a BBS.
That was before Winamp then.
Oh yes, before Winamp. And I was on a BBS, and I saw this file that was called an MP3. I had no idea what it was, but it had like I'm trying to remember. What band? I think it was Red Hot Chili Peppers or something.
Oh, okay, yeah,
like,
RCP.
Yeah, so it was like the latest that came out from that, and this was probably maybe 96, 90. It was early, like early in the MP3, like 90. I was 15 maybe. So it was maybe 95.
Okay.
So this is like early. I'd never heard of an MP3 before. And maybe it was a little earlier than that, because I wasn't on the internet yet. And that's when I was about 14 or 15. So I must have been 14. So this is like, what, they developed in 92, I think, or something?
Well, Winamp?
Within the first two. No, I'm talking about
MP3s.
MP3s.
Yeah, MP3s were early
the MP3s
90s.
that we know.
Yeah.
So I never heard of them until then. Then I'm browsing a BBS, see an MP3 for the first time. Once I got onto the internet more, then I started using Winamp, because that's when I got DSL, or I had some form of advanced dial-up. These things took too long on a dial-up modem. To download a song took half a day.
Wave or some sort of uncompressed media.
If you wanted it
format
to be something more than, whatever the lowest
16K
like 8-bit song or something.
Yeah.
So.
So Winamp, very popular software. I never really used it. It was
it was one of the only things to use back in the day. I mean, it was one of
So
the first MP3 players that we had access to.
yeah, so it was like it came out in like 96 or 97. It was really popular through the obviously the end of the 90s and the early part of the 2000s. I never my this is going to date me, Brian. My like first experience with MP3s and music cataloging was all in iTunes because I had an iPod, and iTunes really had like a phenomenal way of cataloging, ripping CDs, and it did all of that stuff internally. So like my first MP3 experience was everything was within iTunes. I didn't use Winamp until later on. So Winamp disappeared because it obviously has not been updated in 20 years or something like that.
Yeah.
You could still use it, but nobody was. It was not a hot piece of software. So Brian, you should be a big fan of this. Bytetech.com they've decided to release the source code for Winamp, which sounds like a really great idea on face value. Unfortunately, there was some major issues with the source code that they decided to release.
Yeah. Well, okay. So here's where we started running into problems is they had a weird license, first of all.
Yep.
And so this wasn't a normal license. And so you could download a copy of it onto your computer. You can make changes. You could submit those changes to them. And then I think that was it from what I understand of the license that they used.
Like traditionally, a GitHub license, you fork something, you make changes, it's your own branch, you do your own thing.
Yeah.
Not the case with Winamp.
This one, I don't think you were allowed to release your own compiled versions of Winamp. And so even though the source code is there, because originally on this bleeping computer, they had said that this was open source. They had said that they had uploaded open source, and they did not. They had to update their notes on here and put that they did not put it as open source. The second problem they ran into is they included the old Shoutcast source code and some other, I don't know, drivers or some other
Intel,
form of
Microsoft, AMD stuff that they do not have the license for at all.
Yeah, they're sitting there releasing source code for licenses, and I use Shoutcast. I mean, I used to use Shoutcast for running an online radio station where we would interview music, and I used Centovacast to sit there and do
baby,
music, and you could jump into it and you do voiceovers and interject into it. It was, so yeah, I used all this. Didn't have the source code for it though. Now we do. We'll see. I'm sure people will not use that new source code they downloaded.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is like, so because, okay, so I just try, like, I think maybe we're making this too confusing. They uploaded the source code for their software. It also included source code for other software that they don't own. They then decided to delete the code from GitHub. But as we know, Brian, you can't delete code once it's uploaded.
So the Llama Group event, they bought Winamp and Shoutcast, and it says, but it sold it to Xerion in 2022, which means that they don't have the rights to Shoutcast anymore.
Correct. They don't own it. Yeah, it's not something, and they sure as hell don't have the licenses to Microsoft, Intel, and AM. Now they themselves can license that, and that's not an issue. You can't then release software, in this case we'll call it software that you've licensed in a product and call it quote unquote open source. That is highly illegal and very problematic.
And especially if this company purchased this Shoutcast technology with the intention of integrating something into their own technology and then enhancing it, right? Well, now that people have the source code of what they were founded on, it's a possibility that they have the ability to find vulnerabilities and things that they wouldn't have had access to. I mean, the benefit of open source is a lot of eyes get to see it, right? So you know that it's not going to have anything snuck in there. The downside of open source is that everybody sees it and everybody knows the mistakes that you've made, and the people that are smarter than you, or the AI that is able to analyze your code very, has a lot of time to sit there and analyze it over and over again, will find something that it can use against you. So with open source, if you're not going to allow people to fix it, don't release it, because, or don't expect people to. Well, here they told people they couldn't use it anyway. So the people that are going to be affected are the people who didn't follow the license in the first place. So I don't think they're probably too concerned about people, having issues. But Shoutcast, they should be concerned about, because they can get their pantsuit off of them And do
Yeah.
they really have any more money left? I mean, they don't have the ability to develop this themselves. So they put it out there, this out there in a weird way, asking for help so they can still do it themselves, but have other people doing the code for them. It's an odd, it's
It's a
a very odd
mess.
way to have done it. They shouldn't have done
Yeah.
it this way, and they should have taken more time to scour their code and look for things that shouldn't have been in there. You should have run it through your own personal AI and said, is there anything proprietary in here that might break my that might break a license? And it might have found the shoutcast stuff.
Yeah. The reality of this is that, and this is one of these situations that we talk about where there's this rose colored glasses, Brian, of, oh my God,
Yeah.
Winamp, this unbelievable piece of software. And yes, at the time in 1996 and 1997, it was an unbelievable piece of software. At the same time, Windows 95 was a revolutionary, groundbreaking operating system. If you compared Windows 95 to the features of Windows 10 and Windows 11, it does not hold up. And it's the same thing with Winamp. It's an old, antiquated media player that, and the thing that's so much different now is, with streaming, I don't know anybody now that is storing music locally. Now, I know that people do it through Plex and Kodi and things like that, and there is still some use case for it, but it's nowhere near, of course, what it was in the 90s when there was no alternative than to either have a CD or, in this case, some sort of digital version of that media. That is, of course, now gone. And everybody just streams.
I mean, you'll have your specific audio files who aren't playing over Bluetooth because it loses fidelity, and they're not doing all this and not doing that, and they're making sure,
$600 DAC to plug their phone in. Yeah.
Through streaming now, you can have Dolby Atmos on the audio that you get from Amazon, from, there's a couple different services that offer this thing. They're giving you super clear versions, stream it to there in the super high quality version, and then just have a go with cables and all that. And it's still going to be higher quality than a lot of these versions that you have downloaded locally, because these files are huge. These songs, the original ones, when you're using the Dolby Atmos versions from these places, I mean, they're like a gigabyte to 2, or plus, depending on the song size.
I mean, we record our show every week. It's recorded as an uncompressed wave audio file, which is then what I use to compress it to an MP3 and then upload it. And that file is 700, 800, 900 megabytes after the show is done. That's an hour worth of audio. Well, I shouldn't say it's uncompressed. But it's just a raw. And
we're not doing it at a crazy. Yeah, we're not doing. Well, you're saying the uncompressed. They're doing multi-channel audio, and they're doing all this cool stuff.
This is
now,
just
and
a
they're
regular.
Able to do that over streaming, so you can get through streaming the same thing that you can get on a local file, because if you have a fast enough internet connection. So it's really taken away that need, even for the audio file, to have all these files local on your computer. And where are you going to find those in the first place? How do you get the super high end versions? I think Amazon has to be working in the back end to get these from the studios, because where do you buy these things? Where would you buy a Dolby Atmos version other than getting it through one of these services?
You would buy a high quality version digitally, which there are marketplaces that are specific. Sell those? Yeah, absolutely.
You can sell super. Okay. I wasn't sure if that was something specific they have for, transferring those files, or you can just go buy them like that high quality by yourself.
Yeah, you can. You absolutely can do that. So
I obviously haven't purchased music for a while.
I couldn't tell. I haven't purchased a song in a decade. It's all streamed. Yep. So thought that was kind of an interesting little throwback. Winamp, the good old days, and a real disaster when you upload somebody else's property in your quote unquote open source software. Brian, word for the wise, and this should be the official nail in the coffin for Winamp. Rest in peace.
Yeah. So that repo is gone.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Well, gone from their official GitHub. Definitely not gone from the internet.
I'm sure they have it. They have it sitting there.
Not they.
On their repo
people
now.
That downloaded it when it was available for a couple of days.
People have it. I mean, I'm sure you could go find it pretty easily now.
I'm sure you could.
It's around.
Let's see.
Things don't easily get disappeared from the internet.
Source code Reddit. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yep. There it is.
And you'll find it. Yep.
It is on this guy's GitHub right now.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yep. There you go.
All right.
Good times.
So let's talk a little bit. Okay. I want to talk about one thing really quick, since we're talking about this. It's called the true cost of piracy, and this is game piracy.
Arg.
Uh, so they've done a new study, and they say that the true cost of game piracy is about 20% of revenue, according to
Bull.
a new study.
No way.
I mean,
No way.
I mean, I don't really know people that sit here and I don't really know anybody who plays downloaded Xbox games. I mean, I just don't, I'm sure I could find somebody if I asked around. I don't know how common it really is. It's more likely to be on PC. Now, I personally think that streaming services and the Xbox Game Pass, I think, has cut down on piracy quite a bit.
See, this is the issue, and it says it right here in the article. On one side, some publishers try to argue that every single pirated download should count as a lost sale. But see, the problem you've got in where, and it's, yes, it's technically piracy. But the issue you've got now is where a lot of this is coming from is not from new games. It's coming from ROMs of old games that are not available. This is always, and the biggest offender of this is freaking Nintendo, who has all these IPs, all of these ROMs dating back to the NES that they do not make available for people to purchase, to play on their Switch, which is would be a great device for this. They've got some that have spawned up. But if you are playing retro games on a Raspberry Pi or some sort of other emulation or even on a computer emulator or a smartphone emulator, you are using a pirated ROM because there is no legal way to purchase it. And the idea that you're going to get a ROM downloader for your Game Boy Advance so you can rip a copy of Pokemon Emerald out of the Game Boy cartridge to then dump to your phone or dump onto your computer is beyond stupid. So you go to a website, it used to be Cool ROMs. I don't know if they still exist. Not that I ever did this. Friends of mine did this. You'd go to Cool ROMs and download it there. That's the piracy. Who the hell's pirating new games? They're all online. There's no benefit.
I know.
You can't play them. They don't work. What do you mean?
In those specific use cases of, for instance, the ROM piracy, I've heard an argument on the totally. So you got people saying, "Oh, it's piracy. It's taking money out of the mouths of the people that developed it 40 years ago." Okay, great. You could say that, but there's the other side saying, "Well, we're archiving games. There's games that will be lost because the cartridges are going bad, the machines are dying. There's games that are no longer available unless people go and pull those games off and pull the ROMs off and archive them, store them somewhere, save them for the future." Because we've had games from the 80s and things like that they've lost the source code for. They don't have the source code, so they can't go in and update it or make it run in newer things. You have to get the original version, and you have to use an emulator, and you have to play it on the original hardware because that's the only place that it was released.
Yeah.
And as you said, they're not releasing these things other places. But I think there is that danger because of the way copyright works in our system. There's people that have no intention and will never go forward and use those copyrights again. But, people still can't go and use their game legally unless those people turned around and said, "Hey, we're making this free to play or whatever," and changing it. But a lot of the people this is 40 years ago now. So a lot of those people are starting to not be in the industry. They're not, they're not in some company where you can contact them anymore. I just
The companies don't exist
a weird. Yeah, a lot of these companies don't exist anymore, but the ROMs are still there. There needs, I think that's where I feel like I've said this before. I feel like it was one of our last shows. Like they need to come up with a way to deal with software differently because we're going to lose, because the compiled software is different than the source code. And if you don't get the compiled code, when copyright comes around and is passed, it's not like a movie where you have a copy of the movie and you pretty much have it, or a book where you can photocopy it. You can't do more with that game once it's out of public, into the public domain, because you don't have the source code. You only have the compiled ROM. I mean, we're in a weird thing I don't think we've seen before.
No, we haven't seen it, and it's more complex than anybody wants to lead you on to. But I'll tell you what, Brian, I can see piracy absolutely kicking back up, and while I'm not condoning piracy, it starts to make a little bit of sense. I am very excited for Black Ops 6, which comes out later this week. So I did what every normal person does: go over to Steam to see the game. And look at this. Look at this, Brian. The game is $70 freaking dollars.
Yep. The base edition.
I mean, the base edition is $70.
Yeah.
I mean, no wonder, you're going to see an increase in, now obviously Call of Duty is a bad example because if you pirate it, I don't believe you may be able to, I don't know, you won't be able to play it on Steam or online.
Yeah, who knows what people are doing.
But what are you gonna, what do you expect?
Yeah.
I mean, this is you're
it's
making the market
the prices of single player. It hurts single player games the most because they have to put in some ridiculous DRM, which can cause plenty of issues. I mean, de novo.
The
and all
DRM
that,
is
all
right
these
here. Look, requires third-party account, Activision account. That's your DRM, right, built into Steam.
Here because this is an online game, right?
Yeah.
So for here, they can enforce that, but that's where the single player games are really affected more.
Who's making single player games now, though?
Okay. Let's see. Well, I'm
just thinking, like, I'm trying to think of the last time that and there are plenty of Satisfactory and Factorio. Yeah, yes, there are those. Well, actually, look at this. Factorio is right on the homepage of Steam. That is available, and it does support some level of co-op.
Sale, right?
But I would it's not on sale, no. So I don't consider that single player. I'm thinking of your traditional single player game. I just don't remember.
Here's some numbers.
Sure.
53% of gamers prefer single player games. Almost 3/4 of those age 55 plus prefer to play solo. So it's more of an age demographic, but
makes sense.
You've got over half that prefer to play single player. You have that's still a big chunk, 47% ish, or I'm sure, I don't know if there's any spread in there between it, but 47% ish. You've got people that are playing multiplayer, and there you'll see them. They're very vocal, but I think there's a ton of single player players. We've known a lot of them that don't play all these other games. They just sit there and play these games locally on their computers, and you don't even have to be online and on Steam to really, they're not even going to see that they're there and they're doing it.
But I got you. These are not new games that they're playing.
No.
That's what I'm saying.
The people that are doing these single player games, that's the beauty of it, though, is because it doesn't have all this online stuff, they can't generally take it away from you.
No, they can't. Right? But my point is I feel like
that's where they offer that.
The age of the popular single player game. I'll tell you what, the last popular single player game that I played was Firewatch, and that came out in 2013 or something like that. Some ridiculous long time ago. I mean, it's literally been a decade or since that game came out. That's the last popular single player game that I remember that I played. That's new and was there are plenty of single player games. A lot of them are indie. A lot of them are DRM free on GOG. We're talking about like mainstream games.
But mine mostly are console games. Red Dead Redemption 2.
Those aren't single player games. Yes, they have a multiplayer.
I only play them, but they have the ability to. Yeah,
but this goes into
single player.
But this goes into the piracy argument. Now you're right. There are a plethora of games.
I would have to figure out where in the world, other than using an emulator, would I play. And they don't have emulators for the latest versions of the console, I assume.
Sure.
I wouldn't even know where to start playing, pirating those games on console, because some of these I'm only playing those ones because on a console because they're not available on PC.
And you're playing now Red Dead Redemption 1, for example, that is not a new game.
No.
And there is no multiplayer for that, I don't think. I don't remember.
They're getting ready to release the PC version of it. It'll be interesting to see if people will mod it and make it do different things because that's happening, I think in the next 6 months or something like that.
It's just interesting.
And that zombie mode.
As I scroll through my game library and as I scroll through the Steam homepage, I mean, every single one of these games says either, yes, they all have the single player tag, but then they have online co-op too. And it's not to say that the single player isn't fun, but I think that's where, from a piracy standpoint, if you want to do the multiplayer, unless it's a game like Minecraft or something like that where you're self-hosting a server, that stuff is not practical. I don't think it is. Maybe there's cracked copies where it does let you do that. I'm not sure. I'm not in the video game piracy scene at all, and never have been. So because most of the games I play are online, and it's just I haven't bothered to do the research because it's not, to me, it's not worth the time or effort to do it. So yeah, that it's I suspect that if prices continue the way that they're going, which we've seen $69.99 and $79.99 for AAA games, $80. I would not be surprised if GTA 5 is $79.99 on launch. $80 is a boatload of money. I don't care how many hours you're going to play it.
Yeah.
$80 is a lot of money. You're talking about 2 tanks of gas. I mean, when you break out what $80 is, it's a lot of money for people to spend. And with that, I think you'll see the piracy bell curve start. Like, for example, if Spotify shut down tomorrow, music piracy would freaking explode.
Yep. Well,
Like,
and that's the crazy thing, is that's what Metallica and all of them were saying was going to kill the music industry.
was piracy.
And they were 100% wrong. The thing that ended up saving the music industry from piracy, because if everybody had to have physical copies of their music, everybody would copy CDs. They would continue doing the way that they used to do it in the 90s. Oh, here, I've got a CD for you. And you just copy it and hand it to them. Early 2000s. But music, people are like, oh, it's worth paying. I'll pay $10 a month or
Because
whatever
it's
it is.
easy.
Maybe 15
Because
bucks a month, depending on if you want high quality for really good music with a huge selection. Like, why not? It's bet more than I'd have on my local one. And the only way you get that on your local one is through piracy,
yeah,
or a
well,
ton of money. And most people aren't pumping thousands of dollars into their music library.
yeah, and it comes down to the ease of access and the ease of use.
Yep.
Now, I will say this: the piracy argument, or the streaming argument with music, there is some legitimacy to, because music, the streaming rights for music are not. There are issues with those. Artists kind of get shafted, but again, that's between them and the record labels. That's not really my problem as a consumer. I mean, what do you want me to do? I'm going to go to what's the best platform for me. Take that up with your record label. It's not really my problem. So that's constantly an issue. But yeah, I could definitely see video game piracy on the upside start ticking up if these prices continue to the where they are. They're not practical long term, I don't think.
Yeah. And one thing I want to mention, TikTok music, they shut down. So ByteDance shut down TikTok music globally. I
Didn't
don't
know
know,
it
maybe it wasn't
existed.
making money. Hmm?
I didn't know it existed.
Yeah, I didn't use TikTok, but it was a place where I guess
Yeah.
you could go listen to music, and so they shut that down, and probably in anticipation for whatever's about. Are they supposed to be sold or something by some point? There's stuff that's happening. I haven't heard any updates on it, but supposedly they're not supposed to be in the United States after the end of the year or something like this.
Yeah,
Isn't that what it
who
was?
knows? This stuff changes seemingly like the temperature, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I figured they were going away, so maybe this is a step towards that. All right, we got a lot of different things. How about you want to talk about Google for a little bit? Because there's a
Yeah,
lot of
sure.
Google news.
There is some big Google news. Yeah.
So, we're talking about Lena Khan and all that earlier. Well,
Phenomenal. Great lady. She's
people who
done.
love breaking up,
Yeah.
different companies is
There's nothing I
talking
love more than the federal government coming in and
yeah,
telling companies how
and
to
telling
operate.
companies they're not
I
allowed to do
just,
business. Yeah.
when I close my eyes, Brian, and think of my ideal perfect day, I think of me relaxing with a cup of coffee and just the federal government destroying every private business and telling them how they should operate. That's my perfect day. When I daydream,
That's
that's
your
what I
utopia.
think. Absolutely. Yeah, I love it. I'm a big socialist. That's what I love.
Oh yeah. Well, Google has gotten in some trouble here due to some recent court cases, and it looks like they might actually be broken up. And I know they broke up into the Alphabet company, right? To split up and have things have different letters, so they're not all the same company. Kind of like what Daybreak did, right? Just to mitigate the risk, I would assume.
Something
But
like that.
here we got Google. They've been fighting this antitrust case. They have these things with the Play Store, and now it looks like they may be forced to break up a couple different pieces of their company. And I don't know, for instance, with the Ninth Circuit, they're asking for an emergency stay on the Epic ruling because they're saying it's dangerous.
Oh yes.
They're saying that they have very little time to mitigate the serious risks that are going to happen because of opening, that up for the Epic store, and so they want them to, they want them to prevent that. Um, the Android App Store, that's the one really that's going to be, that's getting broken apart from this, and so they've been determined to have been running a monopoly, right? And now their punishment is possibly having to split with Google Android. I mean, is it the App Store? Google Android is supposed to be an open source project, right? I mean, that's what they claim, but they still, I, the
All this
Google App
stuff is going to
Store is
be.
still
This is,
held very tightly by them.
but this is all going to be irrelevant come January of next year.
Yeah, because if there's not a prosecution that's willing to continue the case, Lena Khan or whoever, was the
It's the
this is, I
FTC.
don't
Yeah,
remember.
absolutely. It's
The
antitrust.
FTC.
That would
Okay,
be the
so
Federal Trade Commission.
if they want to sit there and the next administration wants to push this forward, sure, but I really don't think that it's going to go forward in the same way. I think they're going to go after Google. They may use this as leverage to say, hey, Google, we have a lot of proof of what you've done um, for election interference. And so here is what we'd like, we're going to use this to motivate you to do what we would like. That's a possibility in the next administration, but I don't see them, coming at them for the same reason.
No, I mean,
But this
yeah, they
was
might.
through a district judge, so we'll see if it still gets held back.
This might, yeah, they might go after Google search and that entity, but I think you're right. I don't think it's the same. It's not the same attack vector that we've seen from the current Federal Trade Commission, which is,
no.
Pretty much any company that wants to do an M&A is essentially not doing it now because any merger or acquisition is likely going to be challenged by any decently sized merger or acquisition, especially in the tech space where you've got companies like Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft that gobble up these small tech firms because they have technology that they want to own and purchase and it's easier to buy them than it is to develop it and so on and so forth. That stuff, that tap is essentially stopped because nobody wants to buy a company to then have to spend tens of millions of dollars fighting it in court against the federal government, who has unlimited money and unlimited resources when it comes to what they do.
One interesting thing is in the Google Apple EU fight, that was happening over in Europe. That one, Google got fined 1.5 billion euros for that, but they were able to get that overturned. So they got that annulled. So they don't have to pay the 1.66 billion when you or euro. Let's see. So 1.66 billion US dollars, I assume that's 1.49 billion euro. That was 5 years ago that decision was made, but they were able to get it. It says the general court annuls the commission's decision in its entirety.
Wow.
So it sounds like they don't have to pay any money. I mean, are they no longer found to be, to have an antitrust violation anymore? Like I'm not seeing that in here, but that's a pretty big penalty and that's a pretty big savings. So I'm good for them. I mean, we'll see. I don't know if they were really doing anything too crazy to deserve that. Europe seems like it's kind of gone off the deep end lately.
The EU and their weird, stupid.
I don't know. I don't want to just jump on Google because it's like, oh, look what Google's done over here. They could have been doing something that was totally legitimate over there, but of course, EU wanted to make money or wanted to force them to do something possibly. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could have happened.
Yeah, which is all the EU is about is trying to force companies to do things. That's like the only reason they exist is so they can just be a bigger form of government to ruin and to try and they need big government, so that's why they created the EU. I mean that's what it comes down to. This is, without sounding too much tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, I mean it's just an extension of one world government. I mean this is just create the EU, all these little countries do their thing, and we are this big great governing body that helps, wink wink nod nod, helps everybody day in and day out. That's all they do. They're just helping, Brian. You don't seem very grateful.
Well, I know. Yeah, I appreciate their help. You remember that there's those other two lawsuits against video game companies? I think it was for, um, oh, was it for like because they were too addictive or something like that? I think because there was the one suit where remember the families sued saying that their kids were addicted to a video game.
Yeah, I
Those
do remember.
ones
I vaguely
were
remember that.
Yeah, those ones were dismissed. So there were lawsuits against Activision, Blizzard, Epic Games, and Roblox, and all of them were voluntarily dismissed.
Yeah, I'm sure they
And
were.
it doesn't say what there could have been some sort of an agreement in the background, or they could have been told that they'll make their lives miserable if they don't drop the lawsuit
Yeah,
or
or
something.
you write them a small check for because really what this comes down to is money. So you write
Yeah,
the family a small
3,000 in in-game
check.
transactions, right, is what they're
Yeah,
really bickering
yeah.
over.
So Epic, gives the family $10,000 or $15,000, and the lawsuit is voluntarily dismissed.
Now, I want to say
Much easy,
we've talked
much
about this
easier than
before.
going to court. By the way.
So here was their complaint. The suit claimed the child played video games for 12 to 14 hours per day and
Wow.
spent approximately $3,000 on in-game transactions and downloadable content. This sounds like a parent problem to me. It does not sound like a game problem. The fact that a child had the ability to do this is not a problem for me. Of course, if they would have put in protections and, things to prevent them from doing this, it would have not happened. But
What do
if
you
they were
mean though? Like,
parents,
what kind of protections would you
if
have for
parents
this?
put password protections, parental controls of any type on their kids' account,
Now,
this
see,
wouldn't have happened.
but so this is what game is this? Roblox or is this Fortnite?
Yeah, well, yeah, this was against Roblox. So they did it. Epic, Activision, Blizzard, Take-Two Interactive, Rockstar Games, Roblox, Microsoft, and Sony.
Most of those, all of those, besides from, and again, all of my experience in Roblox comes out from what you've experienced. But all
Hmm.
of those other companies do in fact have some level of print. I know for a fact Epic, Microsoft, and Sony do.
How
And
did
they
their
had
kid
those,
get access
and
to
they've had those for
$3,000?
decades because I remember being a minor, not having a credit card and needing to buy stuff on Xbox Live and having to get my parents to give me access to that. So that stuff has existed for quite some time. Well, 15 plus years it's existed on those platforms. And I know Epic offers it as well.
And I would have loved to see this actually have gone to court because I would love to see the parents try to, when they go out there, well, why didn't you just enable the parental controls for your child? It's too confusing. Okay, did you click the big button that says parental controls? What? I mean, this is the kind of people they're probably dealing with. This is if they can't tell their child to get off the Xbox, if that's not in their ability set, we got a problem. And it sounds 12 to 14 hours per day. Okay, why were you letting him be in his room for that long per day?
I don't know
Why?
how that's even
Why?
possible. I
Why'd you
mean,
have an Xbox in his room?
isn't your kid in school? How the hell could you spend 14 hours a day if
They
you're in
probably, yeah,
school?
he's probably in school and then played all the rest of the
It's
day, slept for a
and
couple
you
hours.
can't do that. You go to school at 7 o'clock in the morning. You don't get home until 4. How could you spend 14 hours playing video games? You're just literally not sleeping at all.
Yeah,
When we say no sleep,
yeah. He
literally
probably
not
comes
sleeping
home,
at
gets
all.
on the video game. Mom probably brings food into the place where he's playing. He sits
Well,
there and just
well,
plays.
well,
Probably mom probably doesn't have the courage to tell him to get off and go to bed because he's got school in the morning. So he's got to stay up till 6 a.m. playing his games. I mean, come on. What a
it's a beyond stupid argument.
it's parents that shouldn't be parents is what it comes down to, or that don't have the ability set in their brains to be able to be parents. How about that?
Sounds like it could be the case.
So I thought that was kind of interesting. Um, all right. Do you want to get away from law? We've been talking a lot about law
Yeah.
stuff.
What else
Uh,
we got?
all right, let's talk really quickly here about Unity.
Ah, okay.
And they've put out a new engine version here.
Okay.
Because they've been having kind of a rough year. We've talked about it a little bit, with their pricing model change per install, everything that just went downhill from there. So they've announced Unity 6. Now, is this the one where the license changes happen? I'm trying to
Yes.
see
Absolutely.
here. So I think this is where now you go to some of these more strict rules for the license once you go to this version 6. But this is something for them. they've got a lot of technology they've got to catch up to. Now, they're still, I don't think, anywhere near when it comes to PC gaming, maybe even console gaming, able to provide something that has the graphics
I don't know,
out of the
man.
box as
I,
easily. I mean, there's people that have come up with some pretty incredible graphics on Unity, but I think it's a lot more work out of the box. That's why I
I'm
say
going
out
to
of the
tell you
box.
this. I've played a lot of indie games on console over the last couple of years, and a vast majority of them had a Unity splash screen.
Yeah,
It's
and I think
it's
the
a
newer
very
versions.
easy engine. That's the other thing.
Yeah,
It's not that. Well, it's been a couple years since I've tooled around with Unreal Engine, but Unity I always found to be much more intuitive as the end user and much easier to get something going with. Now, obviously, once you understand the engine, they're I'm sure both just as easy to use. And I know Epic has done a lot of work in the last couple of years to make Unreal a lot more drag and drop and a lot more user friendly. But for a very long period of time there, if you were getting into game development and a lot of really good indie games came out of small studios with, they're not even studios. I mean, literally a person or two making a video game. A lot of that stuff is in Unity. Um,
yeah,
now if you're talking about making a hyper realistic zombie survival game,
yeah,
probably not making it in Unity, but games like Overcooked, which is very
yep,
popular, built those kinds of games. They flock to Unity, Brian, and I have to believe it's for good reason.
yeah, and I think that's true. And one thing last month, Unity said they weren't going to do the runtime fee at all. Remember, so
Yep.
that's gone. They do have adjustments to their licenses that I think will be helping them to get a little more money out of it. But the runtime fee, which would have screwed over a lot of indie developers that weren't building their way of licensing and distributing their product, with that in mind, we're having a bunch of issues. One thing that Unity's also been pushing is they really want people to stop using their older versions of the engine.
I'm sure they
Of
do.
course, this, especially now that people with the older version still have the, um, they still have the ability to do things without the new updated license. As long as they don't upgrade to a newer version, those people are going to stay on that if they don't want to possibly maybe pay some fees. I'm sure they'll calculate it out. If they're going to start losing money or not be able to make money off of the new license, why would they update? It's no longer feasible for them with that license.
Here's the thing, though. If you're starting a development project today, you're not going and downloading a 3 or 4 revision old version
Yeah.
of Unity. Now, if you are on Unity and have been working on a game for the last decade, I would assume most developers have slowly done the transition, going slowly up version by version, fixing things that break and moving forward. But I guess if you're just really hell bent on it, you could presumably be on a version that old. But then you're getting into the problem you start running into, Brian, is compiling and getting your game out for operating systems like Windows 11, which are
Yeah.
new, and compiling and getting your game out for the new, for the Xbox with the changes in how the notification system works and things like that are not going to be up to date in a version of Unity that's 5 years old. So I
Well,
think that I suspect those use cases are very, very far and few in between, and they're probably PC games. They're definitely
well,
not
and
console
and
games.
now, and we're also starting to have some transitions with technology, and that becomes an issue with those older versions. For instance, Microsoft has announced that DirectX is going to start transitioning into SPIR-V, is SPIR-V, as its interchange format, and it's going to be an open source standard instead, so that they'll be able to pretty much have a common interface for video games, right? So that way on Linux, you'll be able to take advantage of something like DirectX, and they can leave it in the compiled version of the operating system and not break any licenses. So, and this will open up a lot of things because DirectX has been a Microsoft thing up until this point, right? But I
That's
think that
gone though.
yeah, and so now this is what's replacing it,
Gotcha.
and so
Okay.
this is going to be the new open standard for this, and it's going to be an open source thing like DirectX. So I think that's great. I'd rather have something that's the and this kind of goes towards the, in a future episode, we're going to be talking about the owning a game, because this is something that's been changing lately. Steam recently has put out, when you buy a game, it no longer says you're buying a game. It says
Mm-hmm.
that you're licensing a game, because you don't own any games, really, unless it's maybe GOG or, things like that. Um, so, that's becoming a pretty big issue. And so with this will at least maybe make it to where you can make a game once, put it in this common format, and then all these different systems that want to play it can make their own interfaces for it and be able to play it on their own systems. It'll be an open source thing, so you'll be able to use it in more than just Microsoft or wherever at. You could play DirectX on a console and things like that before, or
Yeah.
use DirectX.
I guess the good news is that DirectX has slowly faded out into oblivion. It's not I'm looking at their Wikipedia. Their most recent version is DirectX 12.2. That came out in October of 2021. That was 3 years ago. And it they added some features and things like that. But fortunately, and I think probably for the best, while DirectX when it first came out was insane, like the early versions of DirectX were crazy, nobody's using DirectX anymore.
Yeah, and I think this is going to give, but I think gaming with the parts that's not the actual game itself, the more that they can get open source, will make it to where you can finally buy, if you can actually buy a game. I mean, you're not buying the actual game, right? You are buying a copy of the game, a license to the game. But I think it'll get to the point where I can buy the game and then I don't have to worry about not being able to play it again. It kind of solves that problem that we were running into the past, to where this front end in the future, they'll be able to update it, keep it up to date, and make it so that you can still play the old file, right? You can update the interface to connect to it and make it work with newer and newer systems, because it's open source. So your game won't go away. It won't disappear as easily as it would have before. So I think this is really good, and I'm hoping that this gets adopted everywhere, to where this becomes a standard, where games aren't so close. Because right now the game is additions to the game. Why is there an Xbox version and a PlayStation version, and you have to buy, in a computer version you have to buy all these different? When some of them are the exact same game that you're playing, and why do I have to buy them 3 times to play them on a different device? I don't do that for a movie.
Yeah, that's not true at all. What do you mean? If you download a movie on Amazon, you can only watch it on Amazon.
If I wanted to play my movie on an Android, I'm licensed to play my movie on an Android. If I want to play it on an iPhone, I can play my movie on an iPhone.
How are you doing that?
I'm saying if I get a copy of the movie and I encode it in a way that I can legally access it, or I can play it, right? So not a licensed player or something. I can play that anywhere, right? VLC, I have the ability to do more with it, and I'm not limited by an operating system, a device, anything.
Yeah,
it's a common interface. This is where I feel games need to go, that it's not this console war.
I'll tell you why.
That'd be the better option. That'd be the better way to be, right?
No, it would not be. And I disagree with you completely. It would be great for you and I. It would be a so how the hell are you going to handle cutting up the percentages? So if I buy my game on PC,
I'm not talking about purchasing the game.
Yeah, but you are. You're talking about
you can still license. You can still license and sell the game, but you're still selling a copy that can be played other places, and that's where the download and the bandwidth, and that's where the issue more comes from. But
I don't see it like that.
What if the distributor is the one providing the bandwidth, and the interface is being provided by somebody else?
Well, if the distributors are providing bandwidth, then it's not a console game, because the bandwidth has to be provided by Xbox or PlayStation. Of the game, right? It has to be provided by Xbox or PlayStation, though. I mean, that's just those are closed ecosystems. Yeah, but here's the thing:
if you can get away from it, that's where you could get away from that ecosystem.
Yeah, but then if you get away from those ecosystems, the Xbox and PlayStation no longer exist. I mean,
they're
Brian,
irrelevant. That's the thing. That's why business won't. Right?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm playing
business sense. It makes sense for us.
Well, yes, but I'm also going to play devil's advocate. I don't know that it makes sense for us, because what is Microsoft's incentive going to be on releasing a new console with new features and selling it? Let's be clear. Why can Microsoft and PlayStation sell consoles at $299? Now, I know those prices have come down. The consoles have been in the wild for a little while. How can they justify selling a console that costs them way more than $299 to manufacture, box, ship, and distribute? Why can they do that? Because they make the money on the
the
back
game
end.
transactions.
I
Yes.
would argue as the end consumer, I am better off with a cheaper console and having to do that than I am spending. I mean, the Xbox 360 cost Microsoft something like $1,100 per console, and they sold it for $100. They sold the Xbox Arcade for $199. You're talking about them taking an $800 or $900 loss per product sold. As a consumer, I would rather have that because no longer can these companies justify selling a piece of hardware at a loss if that's the case. Now, I understand what you're saying. From a consumer, I disagree with you. I'd rather have the cheaper console and pay the fees on the back end than shell out $1,100 or $1,200 for the hardware, which is what you'd have
But
to
see,
do.
I'm looking at it from a little bit different because with an open source things like this, the reason the console works so well is because the software is tuned for the hardware, right?
Sure.
They tune it exactly. Well, if it's open source, if somebody was really determined or a group was determined to do it, they could tune that open source version of the front end the same way that they did that console and get the same performance. So you get the performance out of another type of device without having to have their hardware, which once again they still don't want, right? This is all stuff that the current system doesn't want. You'd have to break away from that, and someone would have to offer something different that people move to. And then for them to want to contain and keep customers, they'd have to then adjust. That's the only way I think this would ever happen, is someone have to implement something that made people be like, wow, like this is way better. Have them flock to that, and then they'd respond. You're not going to get them to to take money out of their own pocket as easily doing something like this. But I think this is the better way to move forward. But if it was truly adopted, you could do some cool things.
Brian, I present to you your old friend, the Libra 5. This
Libra
has
phone.
been tried in the mobile phone market. It doesn't work, Brian. What is wrong with you? You really okay, Brian, I
This
love
is a
you.
perfect world
Brian,
though we're talking about.
Okay, Mr. Social. I thought I was a socialist. Brian, do you really believe that some company is going to be able to manufacture a piece of hardware like an Xbox or a PlayStation and sell it at a competitive enough price point without it looking or operating like this heaping pile of garbage that is the open source phone stand? This thing's the size of a Zune, which was Microsoft's failed MP3 player bid. This thing is a disaster. This looks like a rugged Motorola phone they give to wildland firefighters or the FEMA administrator.
But hey,
this stuff doesn't work. But it doesn't work, Brian.
Satellite.
It doesn't work, Brian. This stuff never works. There has to be a business incentive for this stuff to exist. And Microsoft
I think that's
and Sony's business incentive is that we can make hundreds of millions of dollars on 30% of everything that we sell. And I'm okay with that because there is some benefit to me as the consumer. You know what? It sucks. It sucks that I own 4 copies of Grand Theft Auto 5, 360, Xbox One, PS4, and PC. That sucks. But I still think I'd rather take, I don't know, maybe I'm completely off base on this. I still think I'd rather take the cheaper console and then let me decide, because I will own multiple copies. Not only will I own multiple copies, I'm going to have to go buy a whole new freaking console to play GTA 6 because it's not going to be available. So GTA for me is a $1,000 investment when I'm going to be said and done with it. I still think I want that. As the end consumer, I'd rather have I put myself back in the 14 or 15-year-old version of myself where there was not I had to struggle to convince 14 or 15 is a bad example. 11, 12, 13-year-old me, where I had to justify and convince my parents to give me $60 to buy a new video game, which was tough. God forbid a new console. How the hell am I going to justify for them to spend $1,100 on a new video game console? I think you're cutting out an entire group of individuals that now consoles, not a whole group of individuals, the vast majority of the middle class, Brian, who has $0 in their savings account and is living their life trading debt from one credit card to another so they can get airplane miles on a vacation that they're never going to be able to take because they don't have any money. So I don't think that's practical at all. It sounds great. I agree with you. It would be nice if I could buy a version of a game and be able to play it multiple places, like your movie example or like your song example with Spotify. I pay one fee.
Yep.
I can listen on my phone. I can listen on my computer. I can listen on my smart speaker, this, and my car, that. Yeah, I agree with you. It is great. I just don't think it's practical for video games. There's no incentive.
Yeah, and that's kind of the issue is money is going to drive this, and
As it
until
should.
things change, and eventually perhaps consoles will become less and less relevant, especially as technology gets to be to where they don't easily put things on a disc. You know, they're starting having to send you practically a hard drive just to play the game anymore and plug it in. Like it's going to get to a point where I think streaming, especially for online games, will be preferred because they'll be able to make it to where everybody's more consistently seeing each other, right? I just think that to where you're not even really playing it possibly locally anymore. You know, you're playing a version that you're seeing in real time that's super fast. Like I think that's where the technology is going to go, to where it'll cut out hackers. It'll make everybody have the same experience. I think that's where it's going to go. And then this won't really matter as much because then you're at that point, you're on a service just like Netflix where you're paying a fee and that gives you access to all your video games.
The new Call of Duty, according to the Steam requirements, would you like to take a guess as to how much space you need for the new COD? This is minimum. I don't know if this is just what it's.
Gigs?
No, it's way less than that. But
okay, I wasn't sure if they were like going nuts.
128.
120. Okay, I was halfway there.
Well, yeah, but I mean I'm looking right now. I have a secondary spinning drive I use for like data storage. I only have 168 gigs free on that, so I'm gonna have to clear out some stuff to download to get the new Call of Duty installed. Actually, I'll probably put it on my assist or well, they're both NVMe's. So yeah, I mean, the solution to this is streaming. I mean, let's roll this back to the beginning of the show.
A worry because of that, right?
Yeah, let's roll this all the way back to the beginning of the show with MP3s and Winamp and iTunes. You had to have physical devices to catalog or to play your audio. I mean, you could use but nobody was listening to music on their computer. That's not that's not the use case.
I mean, there were some of us, but that's because that's where we were all the time.
But it wasn't. Like, I mean, realistically, people wanted to listen to it
later, yeah.
No, they wanted to listen to their car, in their living rooms, or on the go. And so that's, but at the time, you had to manage a catalog of things and have them stored in a central place, which was your home computer, which is where you would store all your MP3s. And then if you remember having the early iPods, you would have to shuffle music in and out because it couldn't store all that much. Like these things, the iPod
and things like that would have music on it.
Yeah, I mean, there was just so many. So with all of this, we've seen it with streaming music. We now see it with streaming movies and things, services like Netflix and Hulu and everything else. And it will come in gaming, Brian, but it's a long time away because bandwidth, even as amazing as things like Starlink are and all of that stuff, there is jitter. There is packet loss. You don't notice it when you're watching YouTube videos or when you're streaming things because everything is buffered. But I mean, you and I are a great example. You and I are sitting here doing this show, and there's times that on my end that it doesn't happen very often, but you'll stutter and break up, and I'm sure it's the same way when I'm coming back to you. We both have fiber internet connections and are sending no more than 2 megabits worth of data across the internet, and even with that, there's still situations where absolutely. And the internet is never going to be that good. I mean, that's why you have buffers. And so I want to love streaming games.
Well,
I just don't know how practical it is until we're at a period of time where every internet connection is point to point fiber based and your latency is 1 millisecond. I don't see how the experience is there.
I think they're going to transition because Elon's had mentioned that they're going to be transitioning to satellites that can do gigabit speeds, and because they're going to be doing lower ones, and then it'll lower. But we're not.
Yeah, but those things are traveling. You're handing off you're handling off one satellite to another. That you've got more jitter in that than anything else.
Yeah, it's taking a step back. People going from wired connections going to satellite. sure, some people are upgrading, but some people are going to be taking a step back than if
Yeah.
people were all transitioning to fiber. Fiber would be the ultimate because it's the most responsive right now that we have. I mean, it's the speed of light, right? Until then, you know, people. I think there's going to be a lot of people using satellite. Elon Musk wants to use satellites for phones. He wants to release a phone that doesn't have a carrier. They're the carrier through their satellite phone.
Which is a great idea.
Makes
I
total
love that.
sense. Like, why
Yeah.
wouldn't he? You know, that's the type of thing. Remember, I said earlier, the thing that changes the whole industry to where then everyone else is catching up all of a sudden. That's an instance of that. He's going to step into the cell phone place and be like, hey, you don't need any of them anymore. You have a phone that works anywhere, and you get, you know, your internet unlimited, whatever. Here you go.
Yep.
How are they going to compete against that? Right. I mean, they're going to have to change their whole structure. And that's what's going to have to happen with, I think, video games before we get away from, you know, what's locking you into what you're in right now of
Yeah.
wanting to play, you know, on that console.
I have a really weird feeling that we are very, and of course, the in the time of the internet and how technology adapts, something being very far away is who knows what the time frame is. I don't think we're as close to that as it seems like we are, because there has been Stadia tried it. There's other companies that have tried this. Microsoft currently does it with Game Pass. I mean, this stuff does exist right now, but to get and the people that use it, a lot of them use it because they don't have the physical ability to have a setup with a gaming computer. The only option is streaming on a lower powered laptop, right? They don't have the financial means to invest in a gaming computer or something like that. But for individuals that can justify that and have the financial means to get a low end or mid tier gaming PC, Brian, that experience is going to win 10 out of 10 times against streaming, and that will happen every single time. And I don't know how we get there, because
especially in the releasing
you can't buffer
like
a video game. I mean, that's what it comes down to. You can't buffer a video game, right? Like YouTube can. I have YouTube TV. I can watch 4 1080p 60 FPS streams all coming in, and there's no issue at all. If the internet jitters or jolts for a second, it's not a big deal. All the streams are buffered. It catches up in the buffer and it's good to go. You can't do that with a video game. And I don't know when we're going to be there, because you're interacting with it. That's I don't know.
That's where I think they're going to have to do, where you're connecting into something else, so that when there is a drop in connection, they can try to accommodate for you, right? And that's
you're talking about essentially RDPing or virtual desktoping into a video game.
Yes, pretty much. I think you're going to be eventually virtual desktoping, and I think that they'll be assisting you with AI or whatever technology, so that you don't notice the jitter, you don't notice the problems. I think they'll be fixing things on the back end in real time for you, so that it feels like a smooth experience. You know, because there are technological issues until major things happen, and you know, the world has internet everywhere that's, you know, super high speed. We're not going to have that. You know, it's going to be jittery problems. You know, it's just where we're at. So
a great conversation, my friend. All
right, well, hey, I think we're ready to roll on here. If you want to find me, of course, you can find me at Boise Computer on X, or at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Getter, Truth Social, and other places. If you want to go check us out and get a hold of one of us, maybe just go check us out on Discord. If you go to our website, infectionpodcast.com, join us on Discord on the upper right. And we've got 11 ARC servers running on there. If you want to go play a little bit of ARC, we have got a way that you can message Nick or I, or you can just toss some links in the show news channel if you want to submit some ideas, things to show. We'll be showing something that PH put out with Star Citizen. We'll be showing that next week. I was going to get some other things about the release, but it's kind of
great.
If you want to watch our live show, you can do that through Twitch or YouTube. We also do the upload after the fact to Rumble. And if you're going to listen to the podcast form, all the lower right-hand side, we've got all the different places that you can listen to that. And there's a lot of different services that we offer. And if you're going to be listening, that means we have the particular episode show notes ready to go and listed on our page. You can go and view the video, or you can listen to it right on that page. And there's links for each of the topics that we discuss throughout the show. So if you'd like to follow along, you're more than welcome to. If you want to support us, there's a support menu option up top, or you can go to infectionpodcast.com/support.
Yes, sirree. For programming note, the next 2 weeks, we're probably going to be off. Definitely next week. Not sure about the week after. It's going to depend on some work stuff. The show didn't get canceled. Brian and I did not have a huge falling out. He didn't notice my camera angle. So, but nevertheless, everything is fine. Brian's got some stuff going on. I've got some stuff going on with work the week after. So no show next week. Maybe one the week after, but the day that it's on might be a little bit different. Maybe a Monday or a Wednesday. So with all of that, Brian, my friend, thank you very much. I look forward to you purchasing the Libre 5 open source phone and letting us know how it goes, and then we'll see if your opinion is any different. So, thanks, Brian. We'll catch up in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, we'll see it.
Alrighty, folks, you can check out my day activities. It's called the Carolina Journal News Hour, now available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check it out on YouTube by searching for the Carolina Journal News Hour as well. If you missed any portion of our program this evening, I encourage you to head on over to our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.